I'm Peter. Welcome to Clearing the Lens. This is a channel where I discuss and analyze my favorite movies. This installment will be part of a running series called A Changing Bond. Today, I'm going to examine the James Bond movies and their relationship with the Cold War. The title sequence of GoldenEye depicts the collapse of the Soviet Union. Silhouetted women holding sledgehammers destroy Lenin statues and sickles. Released in 1995, 4 years after the fall of the Berlin Wall and 6 years since the previous movie, the Bond series was due for a refresh. Since GoldenEye, the James Bond movies have been completely disconnected from the Cold War, barring a quick reference.
Christ, I miss the Cold War.
For the 30 years preceding it, however, the Cold War was as important and woven into the DNA of this franchise as the criminal organization Spectre. It all began with Ian Fleming's novels, which villainized the Soviet intelligence agency SMERSH. This biased depiction of the USSR and KGB, however, alienated the entire Soviet Union, leading to a ban on the Bond books throughout the USSR. When Cubby Broccoli and Harry Saltzman adapted these books, namely Dr. No, into film, they decided to take a more even-handed approach. As Dominic Sandbrook puts it in his article, How Pop Culture Helped Win the Cold War, in Ian Fleming's early novels, Bond was explicitly a blunt instrument for bashing the communists. On screen, however, Bond's Cold War connotations were gently toned down. His early enemies, for example, worked for the international crime network Spectre, not, as in the books, the Soviet intelligence agency SMERSH. By pitting Bond against the fictional Spectre instead of Russia's SMERSH, the Bond producers were able to cater to a worldwide market and avoid alienating large groups of people. This tactic obviously paid off, as, during the Cold War alone, the James Bond franchise grossed over $2 billion, which is over $10.3 billion in today's money, making it by far the most popular franchise of the time. This nuanced approach towards the depiction of East versus West conflicts is a common trend throughout even the early Bond films. You Only Live Twice, released in 1967, depicts a meeting between three major world powers. The US has lost one of their space shuttles and is understandably upset, declaring,
"It is ridiculous for the Soviet government to deny responsibility in this matter."
May I ask what motive our Russian friends would have for wishing to destroy American spacecraft?
My government sees this as nothing less than a blatant attempt to gain complete and absolute control of space itself for military purposes.
We don't agree. Her Majesty's government is not convinced that this intruder missile originated from Soviet Russia. Might I suggest, gentlemen, that this is where you should concentrate your intelligence forces? The Prime Minister has asked me to assure you that this is what we propose to do. As a matter of fact, our man in Hong Kong is working on it now.
Being a UK-based production, the James Bond movies show the UK as offering a somewhat unbiased, outward perspective on matters of the Cold War. Here, both the USSR and the US are portrayed as quarreling and unable to see outside of their Cold War conflict. By using external villains, the Bond films are also able to show the conflict between governments and animosity that many people had towards each other at the time, without coming down on either side of Cold War issues. From Russia with Love depicts the villainous organization Spectre discussing their plan.
To steal from the Russians their new lector decoding machine. For this, we need the services of a female member of the Russian cryptograph section in Turkey and the help of the British Secret Service. Naturally, neither the Russians nor the British will be aware that they are now working for us.
Both governments fall victim to this plan, going along exactly how Spectre predicts. But by using a third party, neither the Russian or British governments are portrayed as the villains. The movie is still able to play off of the Cold War tensions, however, pitting the governments against each other just as they were in real life. An outward villain is also used in The Living Daylights, but at first, the governments again believe that they are working against each other. Let me give you a quick rundown of the plot of The Living Daylights. We follow Georgy Koskov, a KGB officer who wishes to defect from the USSR. He enlists the help of James Bond, who helps transport him back to an MI6 headquarters. He tells them of the KGB's new policy,
Smrt špionam.
Death to spies, Minister.
As the story progresses, however, it is revealed that Koskov staged his defection and that there is no such policy as Smrt špionam. James Bond tracks down Koskov, blah blah blah, gets the girl. The Living Daylights is able to manipulate Cold War beliefs of vicious Russian policies, yet still make the villain an enemy of the UK and the USSR, allowing them to come together in the end and defeat him in unity, encouraging cooperation between both governments. The Living Daylights is not the only Bond film to encourage amicable relations between the East and the West. In The Spy Who Loved Me, MI6 and the KGB joined forces, 007 and Agent XXX working hand in hand.
We have entered a new era of Anglo-Soviet cooperation. And as a sign of Russian good faith, I'm prepared to make available to you the microfilm recovered by Agent XXX.
This movie aligns the USSR and UK with one another, completely avoiding alienation of either party and even encouraging an end to the Cold War conflict. Many other Bond films also portray the British and Russian governments as single-minded. In Octopussy, the inner workings of the Russian government are shown to be peace-oriented.
I believe I expressed the opinion of everyone present that adoption of NATO proposals does not compromise our defensive position.
World socialism will be achieved peaceably. Our military role is strictly defensive.
Duh?
Is that understood, General Orlov?
The Soviets are not played as one-dimensional villains. They also have the goal of world peace. Through the character of Orlov, however, the movie still depicts corrupt Russians, playing off audience expectations of the USSR. This idea of corruption within the Russian government is present throughout many other Bond films, with Zorin, an ex-KGB agent in A View to a Kill, all the way up to General Orumov in GoldenEye. Bond even receives a medal from the USSR for the defeat of Zorin. The James Bond movies portrayed the Cold War dynamics of the East versus West with nuance and care, leading to the movie's extreme success at the time, being by far the highest-grossing franchise. Even now, the depictions of the USSR seem fairly unbiased, especially when compared with other films from that era. The Bond movies have stood the test of time, and this is reinforced by their critical reception, the James Bond movies before GoldenEye averaging a 71.4% on Rotten Tomatoes. The even-handed approach taken in depicting the Cold War meant that the Bond films were popular at the time and are still regarded as classics to this day. Thanks for watching. Again, I'm Peter from Clearing the Lens. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.